some backlash. All right. All right. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. My name is Brandon. Welcome to another episode of You're Doing It Wrong. No one has mastered life, so I trust in the one who's done it twice. So I'm trying to find a new slogan. Y'all rocking with that? Why are you pausing?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5? You
would hear again.
Huh?
Would listen to again.
Well, listen, but y'all don't like the slogan?
Say it again.
I said, none of us have mastered life, so I trust in the one who's done it twice. Boom.
How's he done it twice?
He came, he died, and he rose again, bro. 2 times. Why I gotta explain my slogan to y'all?
He only died once.
So he lived twice, bro.
Oh, that. Okay.
Come on, man. I have my bars on deck and everything.
Serious, sound like Jay-Z over there. Came and saw and conquered from sold out seats.
Returns, that would be a 3rd time, right?
But he's already living, though.
Is he?
All right, whatever, y'all. I'm excited to be here with another episode of You're Doing It Wrong, and clearly I'm not doing it right. I'm still searching for a slogan. But I like the slogan. I just gotta spice it up a little bit, I guess. But whatever. If y'all haven't checked out the last episode with me and my lovely wife, Mylena, go check that out. Clearly she is lucky to have me.
Wow.
Because I'm an amazing husband.
Wow.
Clearly. But this week, this month, see, I wanna she can't hear it. But this month we are going to be tackling the topic of racism. And if anybody knows me, they know I hate being cliche, and I know racism is an over talked about topic, especially here in America, but I think that's the issue. We only have the conversation within the confines of an American perspective, and not view it as a global, as something that affects us globally. And so usually when we have the conversation, it's just black and white issue. And if we say black and brown, in my estimation, I'll just speak for myself, the brown people hardly ever get a chance to speak for themselves. So today I am joined by some brown people. You know, I am truly blessed to have these men in my life, and I'll just introduce them one by one, and we can just dive right in. But to the furthest left, I've got my brother Muhammad, who works in IT, and in the middle, my guy Jose, who owns his own construction company. My brothers.
Wow.
How? And if for those who are listening, y'all can't see who it is, but this is my Pakistani friend and my Mexican friend, who are here with me, and to have just a great conversation about race. My brothers, how are y'all doing today?
Firstly, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be on your show. I always wanted to be on an albino person's show.
Facts. Okay.
But I love
so is this his career after like losing to Black Lightning? Like, is this what he's doing now? After like
what was the guy's name in Black Lightning? Because some people might not know.
Oh, Black Lightning is a TV show.
No. Oh yes. Explain what Black Lightning
is. The villain's name is Brandon Russell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, Brandon Russell. But no, it'd be kind of funny if like I actually was the Indian guy.
Fun fact: the guy who was a villain in Black Lightning also was like a chipmunk in Kim Possible.
It was a naked mole rat.
A mole rat.
Naked
When
mole
do you
rat.
get your callbacks for your
Next week.
Are you gonna be in the movie?
Next week.
Are you gonna completely shave your face again?
No, I ain't gonna do that, bro. I look crazy.
Oh, okay. But is a mole rat hairy?
We gonna have to switch it up.
Rat? Not sure.
We gonna have to switch it up.
Cool.
But how are y'all doing? Y'all didn't even answer the question.
I don't know who you're talking to, bro. Like, there's no Pakistani guy. Or...
So clearly, I was
right?
trying to have some fun with my brothers Roshan and Bapo. I don't know what the heck a Bapo is, but I guess he can explain that. But in all seriousness, these are some near and dear brothers to my heart, and wanting to have a serious conversation, as you can clearly tell.
Good luck with that.
Wanting to have a serious conversation about race, but you know, I've got these 2 clowns here with me. But seriously, Roshan, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I think that this is an interesting episode that you have lined up, an interesting topic that you have lined up. Mm-hmm. So happy to be your token South Asian /brown /Desi /Indian/Pakistani if needed person on the podcast. So
nice.
Start with that.
Look like Ray Romano too. Although I'm sorry, that's bad.
That's a first, man. Ray Romano.
Dude, you look like a Ray. Anyways,
it's the nose. It's the nose.
It's the
Makes
nose.
Sense,
And then my brother, who's taking up half the. Excuse me. Oh, go ahead.
hey,
how are you?
Get off Fluffy people, okay? Fluffy people are amazing, okay?
Fluffy.
Yeah.
Are you Fluffy? He's so funny.
Dude, Gabriel Iglesias, love that dude, bro. I hate that.
Is he like your cousin or something? Can I get
You talking about the dude from Modern Family?
Nah, bro, that's my son. Nah, that's not. No, I love Gabriel Iglesias. He's like, oh my God, yes. Love that dude tremendously. No, my name is Bapo. That's a nickname. So my government name is, do you want the American version or my Cuban family call me?
I want the one that's hard to pronounce.
So my Cuban family calls me Caito Roque. So I'm Cuban American.
It's good that we shorten that up. Man.
Yes. And when I moved to North Carolina, some people it's hard to pronounce Caito. Like, are you Coyote? Like, no. So the closest thing people normally call me is Kyle. So Kyle Roque was a name given by my mom. Love her to death. And so, but the nickname Bapo is what everyone calls me. Bapo in Spanish is a slang term that means strong and loyal friend. So that's
which he is not, but it's cool. But
thanks. I mean,
the irony is
cutting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nah, but seriously, guys, I am truly honored to have y'all here. All jokes aside, even though I don't know if we're gonna get through this without any jokes, but whatever. I'm truly honored to have y'all. As I've told y'all before, wanting to branch out and just create my own content, how important it is to have people who support you. And both of these brothers were with me last year, supporting me in other endeavors, and just have been a tremendous blessing in my life. So jokes aside, they are tremendous individuals. And I thought they would provide great perspective on the conversation. It sounds like you're like thinking of a joke, bro. Oh, I thought you was.
Nah,
you
man.
sound like the wheels was turning, that you was about to try to land one.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'll be serious for a second, okay? I do want to give a shout out to you, bro. Like, you've done a phenomenal job with your old podcast, and I'm very honored to be a part of this. I know Roshan, getting to know you the past year, right? So a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Over some chicken and waffles, which was even better.
Yes,
it was. I really am proud just to be a part of this, but I'm really grateful for you, Brandon. I know this is very difficult to do, and I just want to say thank you.
Nah, I appreciate it. But I thought you guys would have great perspectives on this issue of racism, because I have a unique one, and I'll get into that, but I definitely wanted to highlight you guys because we, especially as Black people, we talk about race a lot. And again, speaking from my perspective, I feel sometimes we are not as sensitive to the plight of other races, ethnicities, whatever you want to call it. And I just wanted to use this opportunity to give y'all, just to speak y'all minds however you want to spit it out, but just your experiences growing up as a Cuban American, as an Indian American. Yeah, I guess.
Right.
So,
yeah,
what are you Indian American? Let's clarify that.
As of April 2016, I am an Indian American.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
So, thinking that they can provide just some very good insights. So, starting with you, Bapo. Again, you are Cuban, and following the stereotype, you are from Florida.
Yes, Miami, Florida, 305 till I die.
There you go. Just talk about, because we off camera before this, just preparing, just having just great conversation. Just talk about racism, or just your experience growing up as a Cuban American in Florida, and just how you internalize this thing of race, because it's so nuanced and such an explosive and dynamic conversation to have, that there's a lot of perspectives on it. So I just wanted your take and perspective and your experience growing up.
I appreciate it. So born and raised in Miami, Florida. People call it North Havana just because we're filled with Cubans. But Miami is filled, I think it's a melting pot of the United States of different races. There are parts in Hialeah, Carol City that you'll go to that have 5 different boroughs of different ethnicities, different conversations, tongues you need to learn. So, story, my dad is Cuban, came on a raft to the United States, did get deported, and then came back a second time, came to the United States. My mom is Irish Native American. And so that's where it's the Cuban American part. I'm from Miami, born and raised in Jackson Memorial Hospital. So I am second generation, and my plight, I would say, with racism can be very different compared to those who are from the motherland. But so for us, or for me, I'm sorry, for regards to the conversation that of racism, I really didn't experience racism until I moved to the South, to the North or whatever. So Miami, I mean, there were some prejudices that we had. Like, for some reason, it wasn't trained to me to not like different Hispanic races, but just some reason it naturally happened. Like, for me, I grew up in a sense of, with my Cuban family, that the worst thing I can do was date a Puerto Rican.
Wow.
And so, like, when I dated a Puerto Rican girl one time, I was like, oh, snap. I might need to break up with this chick because she's Boricua. And how my family take it, but it was a whole different scenario. But so with growing up in Miami, there's races all over the place, different ethnicities, from Jamaicans to Haitians to like Trinidad, Tobago, like Creole. You also have Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Jewish people, blacks. Blacks to me were different compared to blacks in the South. There was African Americans. To me, those are guys who are from Chad, from South Africa, who are actually from Africa. So that was a different dynamic too. But I really didn't experience racism until I moved to North Carolina, and I started talking to people, and they can tell I was not from here. You can listen to my accent, and you can hear that's not normally what people think Hispanic people sound like. But at the same time, people even know who are very ignorant of where Cuba was. People are like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm Cuban. They're like, oh, what part of Mexico is that from? I'm like, it's not. It is an island to the south of Florida. And there was a constant thing that I had to deal with. And also, if you see the video, if we ever post a video or you see anything on my social media, I'm a big dude. I'm not short. I'm 6'3". My grandmother's 5 foot. And like, there's like, when we have family portraits, I sit down so everyone can be my height. And so, like, I'm not your typical Hispanic person. But when I moved up here, people already declassed me because of my ethnicity. Now, I understand I would introduce myself as Kyle just so that I can, actually not they, but more me can feel accepted. But the one thing that hurt the most and was the biggest racism to me was when I finally admit to them or say or confess I'm Cuban, there's always a face change of, oh, you're Hispanic. And that was the most painful thing to endure, because you can tell what they viewed me before was no longer what they're going to view me now. Now I'm classified as a Mexican and nothing more, nothing less. And that was the hardest part of racism, where people, spick. If you don't know what that means, that's basically the N-word to Hispanic people. Why don't you get back on your raft and go back to Cuba? In high school. And I'm like, dude, getting threats from the KKK? Like, that was real in the South. I thought that was all movie fake stuff. Yeah. But when I moved up here, you just saw that the racism is very real. And the hard part too was, as you mentioned in the introduction, the actual racism struggle for me was like, in discussions of racism in the South or in the United States, I was invisible because it wasn't Latinos or Hispanics. It wasn't browns. It was just blacks and whites. So that was a whole different type of racism I had to deal with, that even though I'm a different color shade in God's beautiful design, I'm still not considered worthy enough to be part of the conversation of racism.
No, and just listening to what you were saying, it's crazy how racism seemed to be a very regional thing, that even though you were in Florida, it was more like a melting pot. And where exactly in Florida?
So it's Miami.
Miami's like...
So I would say, if people know Florida enough, West Palm Beach north is Florida. Yeah. West Palm Beach south is a whole different country. Just because if you go to Gainesville, where the Gators play, you won't find people who speak Spanish there fluently at times. Tampa, you will. Miami, you won't.
And just thinking about when we're talking about just regionally. So, Roshan, you were born in Saudi Arabia, or born in India, grew up in Saudi Arabia. Yep. You never seen a Spanish person. Or have you?
Not until moving here, I hadn't.
That is crazy.
To the U.S., yeah.
What about, like, white people?
Yeah, so do you want me to go ahead and share kind of
my
background and my story? Yeah, so
She's trying to make it a smooth transition, but you
there you go. Yeah. This is where I start my story.
Press play.
Should I go?
I'm Roshan. I'm natively from India. Grew up or was born in South India, and lived my early childhood in India till about the age of 10. I did my elementary schooling in India. And then moved to Saudi Arabia because my parents had jobs there, and was there 6th to 10th grade.
Okay.
But where I lived in Saudi Arabia was kind of a big city, something equivalent to an Atlanta or Chicago or something. So by virtue of being a big city, even though it was Saudi Arabia of all places, it attracted a lot of international workers. So you would find a good population of people that were not the locals, not the Saudi Arabian folks. And so because of that, while there was a good amount of Indian people, and I stayed mostly among them. I went to an Indian education school, even in Saudi. I was exposed to many international groups of people. So we would see a lot of European or American folks.
So let me ask a question real quick. When you said I went to an Indian school, at Saudi Arabia, were there schools dedicated for just particular races only?
Not races, but more so international students.
Okay.
So the idea is that people who were foreign workers from India could reliably have their children, going to a school that would provide them with the same education they would back home. So it's more so the curriculum. So the same type of testing, same textbooks, same stuff was the stuff my Indian friends from back home were learning. So it was more of a standardized, because the reputation was that the local schools were built kind of for citizens of Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about Saudi Arabia, it is a state that is organized around Islam.
Correct.
And therefore all of their structures are built around that, including their education system.
Okay.
So for me, that was the best decision for my parents to make, to mimic the most close experience that it would be for me to go to school in my own home.
And how many years were you there in Saudi Arabia in school?
6th to 10th grade, so 5 years.
Oh, wow.
There. However, my parents have been working in Saudi Arabia since 1990 or so.
Okay.
It's just that's when we moved to a big city in Saudi Arabia where there was a good school that they were happy to bring me back to Saudi Arabia for.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, I lived outside the U.S. till I was 16. And then in 2006, I moved to, of all places, Louisville, Kentucky. Not my decision. That was my parents' decision to make, to find the best employment opportunities that my mom could. And I don't blame her. They're happily living there. My parents happily live there to this day. And, but yeah, so my journey in the United States and journey as an ethnic minority and a cultural minority started, in the summer of 2006. So it's been about 12 and a half years at this point. And my wife and I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina about 1.5 years ago. So a good 11 years was spent in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was a big change. People asked me when I moved here, and when I shared that I'm an first generation immigrant, that, hey, was the culture shock severe? And for me, the interesting thing is living in a big city and global kind of city in Saudi Arabia, I already was exposed to a lot of the big pop culture stuff. So it wasn't that was a shock. I even spoke English fluently growing up. It was a Queen's English, but nonetheless, the right English.
Well, excuse me, Governor.
Here.
Well, what was that?
Cheerio, mate.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I don't know why Australian came in there, but yeah. But really, the shock was in the fact that you moved to Kentucky, and it's in a group of, I'm living in a group that is majority white folks, and majority people that are not used to meeting almost any kind of minority, let alone, an Indian immigrant. So that was rough. Yeah. I feel
your pain, because when I moved up here, the natural thing I always got from people is like, oh, you're the first other Hispanic person I met.
Yep.
I'm like, it's Raleigh. I think you'll meet more, but no, there's parts that you don't. Or 2, you're the first Cuban. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I should not be your first example of what a Cuban person is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I understand that, man. Yeah. So for me, that was a lot of the case. It's fascinating because you kind of understand the paradigm or the view that people are coming from. in that when I came in, and it was right before junior year of high school. So my first couple of years being in high school, that was rough, coming in right in the middle of high school when everyone already has their network set up. But I would get questions like, "Oh, are you an international student?" Or are you spending one semester here or multiple semesters? Completely not kind of trying to come across as bigoted. Just purely did not have the mindset of, oh, there could be an immigrant among us. You could be an actual immigrant coming here, not to just get an education and go back, or not to just do a temporary gig, but are here to stay and are here as part of our culture. So that has been kind of emblematic of my experience largely living in Kentucky, in that it's a lot of trying to find my way in, kind of familiar with the tone of acceptance or acceptance that you shared. But it's kind of trying to earn my way into the community with the majority culture. And it's been very tough.
I wanted to stop it right there because it's unique because you came from a place where you were the majority culture back in India. Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming there was not that much racism prevalent there. I do remember you telling me there was issues of colorism. Yeah. So is that possibly like the form of racism that you experienced?
What is colorism?
Sure, yeah. So what you can find within India, or just among Indian people, even all over the world, is colorism is very prominent. Colorism is where there might not be racial differences between me and my fellow Indian citizens or Indian people, but we come in various shades of brown, going from light and passing as white to dark, very dark, that could potentially pass as black. And so what you also saw then is a hierarchy system based on how fair you were. So the more fair you were, the more beautiful you were perceived to be. And that was something that was ingrained, but also businesses cater to that in the way they fashion makeup and stuff like that.
It's like some people in the African American culture, and you can speak to this, Brandon, if you want, of the brown paper bag concept.
I hadn't heard of that till you mentioned it.
Do you know about that?
You was telling me, but go ahead.
So I learned this from speaking to girls and talking to the guys in African American culture, that you get a classic proper brown paper bag that you took to school. For some people, the more accepted you are is the closer your skin tone is to the brown paper bag. You can see subculturally that the darker you are, somewhat you're not accepted. And the whiter you are, even not accepted. So I thought it was a really interesting concept to see that.
But isn't that shown in... Because the crazy thing you told us about, and you kind of said it in passing, like you said, there's a difference between Latinos, Hispanic, and then Bonic. I don't want to even mess it up. Boricuas?
Boricua means Puerto Rico. That's Puerto Rico. Mulatto.
Okay. Mulatto, but mulatto has a different...
So it's a café con leche, basically, some people will say, where it's a mix of race of white and black. So you have that kind of mulatto taste. But I'm sorry, what was your question? I blanked.
Colorism is... You were talking about it from a black perspective. I know the black people be like, why is the Hispanic person talking about colorism from a black? But
he's black-splaining.
Yeah, he's exactly black-splaining.
Wow.
Yeah, good one.
Slap hands.
No, but that colorism is even seen in Hispanic culture.
Definitely,
as well.
bro. So it's interesting to see, and then the Hispanic culture itself, like acceptance. A lot of people forget that some of the Caribbean. So sometimes with natural people say if you're in the Caribbean islands and you're Hispanic there, or Spanish, you're Hispanic. Latin America, which is Mexico South, that's Latino. So there's a kind of a difference for some people, including myself. But even the skin tone itself, the colorism, it's very prevalent in the actual Hispanic culture. A lot of people don't know, like, Cuba was a slave port. There was people who are dark African American Cubans. If you ever get a chance, there's a band called the Afro-Cuban All-Stars, which is a mixed mulatto Africans, Cubans, and white. So you can get a really dark Cuban American or Cuban in general, or you get a person who's blonde hair, blue eyes. Like a lot of people don't know, Cameron Diaz is a Cuban American. Her dad's Cuban, but people like blonde hair, blue. She looks white, but no, there's different shades of things. So even there is colorism within Hispanic culture, and even want to dive into the Native American concept of Mexicans. Some who think that there are more Mayan, or I forget what the Native American, I apologize if I quote that wrong, but the more Indian Native American you are compared to more Hispanic, there's classism even with that too.
Interesting.
Now, for you, Roshan, have you ever experienced overt racism?
Yes, I've heard people have used slurs against me, racial slurs or stereotypes. Some of the ones that I can utter would be something, turban head or really the interesting thing about being brown but not obviously from an area is that you tend to get all kinds of slurs for all kinds of people.
Yeah, bro.
So for me, it was a lot, especially when maybe some may know that I lived in Saudi Arabia. They confuse me to be Arab sometimes, so I get a lot of slurs that are catered towards Arabs, terrorist or turban head or, and messed up part is I've even heard, like variations of slurs used against black people, but obviously modified to attack brown people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I've gotten that, maybe not so much face to face, but more so in the form of online communication, where you might find some anonymous people coming and just attacking you online because of something that you posted, and it comes out in these ways.
But never like personal.
Straight to your face.
I think part of it is because I came in at age 16 and came in kind of with only 2 years of high school. In high school, the worst I got were people kind of, I did feel some things, but not overtly racist, where basically I would be sitting on the front of a class, everyone would be working on an assignment, and there'd be somebody that I couldn't tell from the back throwing stuff at me. But then I turn around, but no one wants to give up who it is. So, and it was very obvious because I'm the new person. I'm the one not like the rest. So I thankfully hadn't reached any overt kind of thing. But part of it, part of playing the game is knowing how to avoid such situations. And that's what I would try to do as the new person in this country.
The thing that's so unique about you is like I said, you went from a majority culture where you would see a lot of Indians to I guess I'm just assuming that was just probably you and your family who was only Indians in Kentucky that was close to you. Like, did you have any other Indian friends? Because I know for me, and I'll get into my story, when I moved from New York to North Carolina, if I found somebody from New York, I was super tight with them.
Sure.
Like, you moved from Saudi Arabia to Kentucky, you any Saudis or whatever?
Yeah, we had a lot of Indian families that moved around the same time for the same reason. Basically, we moved here because my mom got hired as a nurse with a hospital group in Kentucky. And at the same time, they were recruiting in waves. So there were waves of other Indian families as well. And the neat thing was that we all usually, if our moms were working in the same hospital, we were kind of recommended to live in the same apartment complex.
Oh, word.
So it kind of helped in that we had kind of this built-in community, about 5 or 6 different families that stayed together, and the kids were about all our age. So we had kind of our group, even if we didn't have a whole lot of friendships or connections in high school, we had that after school at least. But at the same time, there was still also a disconnect because having lived in Saudi Arabia, the experience of me is different from someone who may have lived in India all of their childhood and moving. Because me living in Saudi Arabia, is a different experience than someone living those same years continuing to live in India.
Yeah.
So there's that disconnect as well. But I was grateful to have that, but I didn't feel like that was the solution either. So it was kind of being in a tough place where I didn't fully belong in my own community, but having difficulty adjusting, assimilating either. But what about you, Brandon?
Damn, look at that segue, bro. The segue was beautiful.
And this is when Brandon
There's your cue card.
My experience is very unique, and I think all of you guys can attest that one race isn't, and I've known people have used this word a monolith. You just can't. There's
That's
not
a
one
$4
Hispanic.
word.
There's not one type of Hispanic. There's not one type of Indian person. There's not one type of black person. My story, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. You was either black, Spanish, or Middle Eastern, ironically. So I'm right at home.
The three amigos.
So there we go. And for those who are listening, and you can watch on YouTube as well, I definitely would do the white paper test. You can use for me. I am definitely on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to black people, and I'll probably show some pictures on. Like, they're joking about me being albino, but I think when I was younger, I was probably lighter, and my hair was blonde too.
Do we have any pictures of that?
Pause.
We do.
You said we were joking, or we're pointing out the facts?
Call it what you want.
Blonde hair?
Yeah, blonde. Like,
is that why you shave yourself bald?
That's part of it. And
did you know this?
No.
Yo, where's your wife, bro? We need these.
His name is Brandon Russell.
I'm gonna show the picture.
Is your middle name Carlton?
Show the picture. Carlton. I'll show you a picture. It's a nerdy one, Elliot. I hate it.
It was close.
Yeah.
To Carlton.
Nerdy one. So very different from right now, right? Okay, we're going.
Nah, get him off. So even growing up with my mother having to deal with people thinking that she dyed my hair, always just the constant stares, and I didn't grow up with my my biological father. I grew up, and I hate saying stepfather. He was the man who raised me. Shout out to Rob. And my the man who raised me, my father, is darker skinned. So I'm sure when he would come in the room with me, they would probably be like, but you was with a white woman, or just wondering if I was with him. So I'm sure he got those stares and whatnot. So that was definitely emblematic of my entire life. People, I'm just sticking out like a sore thumb. And I've always been tall too. So I would, and I kind of hate telling the story because I don't ever want to paint myself as the victim, because I got it. I learned early on that, if you got something, people going to crack on you for it. And that's all we did at school, And so I don't want to call it a flaw, but what would be perceived as a flaw, or not the norm, I should say, was easily accessible for someone to criticize. And I learned early on that, okay, I can do the same thing back. So as cruel as people would be, I got the albino, got the white boy, got any kind of thing you can think of. And it was crazy how creative, like, the kids were in school to just know all these things off the top of the head and just going at me. But I was just as cruel. So I don't ever want to paint the position like I was some innocent, defenseless person, because I was snapping too.
Do you think that was part of a mechanism for you to kind of deal with it without it letting it bog you down? Or you think part of it is you actually enjoyed it, or make
the funny thing is, for those who know me now, I'm more reserved and laid back. When I was younger, I was definitely more outgoing and more of a class clown. So I think I welcomed it because it would give me an opportunity just to be as mean and vicious to somebody else. Sure. So I kind of embraced it. So I think if I wasn't witty with coming back, it would have hurt me because it would have felt like I was getting ganged up on. But I probably ganged up on other people more than they ganged up on me. But I say that to say it became very apparent that this wasn't something, racism wasn't an issue that just plagued, one particular people. And I don't want to say that people are racist. The point that I'm making is that we will find anything that we can not the norm to make fun of someone else. Like I said, you're Indian, you're Cuban. Even within that own subset, you would find things to make fun of each other about, and you guys are the same. Yep. Whatever complexion, whatever the case is.
We both look like Ray Romano.
Whatever it would be, that would be exposed, and so I think for me, it did affect me adversely, where I never put value in my race because I understood that what does it mean to be black, because my mother's black, my father's black, but because I'm several, and I got it. So again, I don't want to paint myself as the victim, but it's like, what does it mean to be black because I'm not, the same complexion as X, Y, and Z, but I'm just as black. And so I never was really concerned about learning about black history. I didn't really care. I never was... I'm not going to be the Kwanzaa guy. I didn't really care about all of that. I wasn't going to be that Afrocentric person. And this is when I was younger, so let's throw that out there, where I did not care as much. Go ahead.
Are you now?
I'm not, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
And so growing up, I did not really care about learning that because I did not find that validation there when I was younger. And I think a lot of black people struggle with that. What does it mean to be black? And even as an adult, that's affected me because even though I want to say I've gotten darker, but y'all still cracking the light skin and the albino jokes, and even like colorism within the black community, it's the same thing where it's the lighter you are, the better off you have it. Yeah. And the thing is, I didn't reap those benefits because it was just me who was the super light person getting killed. So any benefit that could have been perceived, I didn't get it. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I understand there's, people who are dark skinned and have to go through that plight. So please, I'm not being light skinned. And again, those ideas of being light skinned, being soft, being overly sensitive, I think that's what I fought against. That because I'm light skinned, that you're gonna try me, you're gonna think I'm a punk. And I feel like we're kind of from the same culture. I don't know if you had to grow up with that where you had to prove your manhood. Don't try me like that. And so I felt like no one ever tried me too physically, but people would say little slick stuff. Yeah. Not knowing bro, especially when I moved from Brooklyn to North Carolina, people would definitely say slick stuff thinking I was from the suburbs or something. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm not from there. But just having to overcompensate, because I didn't want to be seen as that overly sensitive, light skinned dude. I don't know if you look like you had something you wanted to add.
No.
Just that overly sensitive light skinned person. And as I got older, just seeing how that did kind of affect me, and even to the point where I want to say around this time last year, I even did a 23andMe because I was curious. I wanted to know. I knew my mother was black. I knew my father was black. I knew my grandparents were black. But I'm like, I wonder what it is behind there. And just funny story is, everywhere I go, that's the first thing someone would notice and highlight. And next, are you biracial or whatever it may be, or just crack a light skin joke. And we're fortunate, and for those who are listening and watching, the way I know these brothers is that we all go to the same church, and we'll kind of dive into that a little later. But we've got a wonderful pastor who I won't say his name, but he has a great sense of humor, and he would make jokes, and I love that. I would love people being able to crack jokes on me. And I don't know, you may be familiar with this term. I don't know if Roshan is familiar, but do you know what a red bone is?
That's a song.
Nope,
that's a song.
Heard that before.
But even before red bone,
that's
or American.
America.
Even before Childish Gambino came up with red bone, that's what you're referring to, right? The song.
I was joking with that, but there's also the comedian Redbone.
Oh, so you don't even know what red bone means either?
I have an idea, but I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, it's what you refer to as a light-skinned female.
Yeah.
And so, and no shade to my wonderful pastor, and I hope he listens to this. And to give y'all some context, we were in a meeting, and I had my daughter Autumn with me, and I think he was holding her, and he says, and she says, "Daddy" to him. And my pastor goes, "I'm not your daddy. I'm brown skin. I'm not a red bone like your father," or something like that. So I just, why do you make the crazy? I'm gonna save that and gift that crazy face. Hey. And no shot. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying my pastor was mean to me or nothing like that. We got comfortable enough where he could make that joke, but that was the type of things that I had to deal with. And the point of the story is, his brother has the same mother and father, did a 23andMe. And their results were posted. And so it kind of inspired me to do my own 23andMe.
Was it posted like the Maury Show?
Oh, it was, because they posted it like
you are not the father.
They posted it on Instagram, and I ended up seeing it.
That's right.
So he posted it, and I was like, dang. So I'm gonna post it anyway. So Pastor,
it's actually a new show called 23 and Marry.
Oh.
So they posted it, and the results came back that they were 83% sub-Saharan African, and then 13 or 14% European. So if somebody's a betting person, if I'm going to do the 23andMe, the assumption is I'm going to be less than 83% black and more European than them.
Survey says the results are in.
They are in.
We'll be right back at this commercial break.
And the crazy thing is, I haven't even told them yet. So this is going to be his reveal. Once I edit it, I'm gonna show it. Wait. Pastor, I'm blacker than you. So just those dynamics where it was so validating for me. And by the way, 88% sub-Saharan African. Check my numbers, and 9.9% European. What you say?
Wakanda
Bapo?
forever.
Well, nah, that's old now. We can't do that. No.
Why can't I not do that?
Number one, it's old.
Whoa.
It's super old.
Nice.
Everybody does Wakanda.
Old now?
Black Panther is old, bro.
Doing the Wakanda
You said
forever.
Wakanda.
Yeah, I did.
I did. Get your game, but there's no girl named Wakanda forever.
Look, racist. Look,
It's not racism.
Oh, I did. No. You know how bad it is? He said there's no girl. He didn't say there's no black girl, but I assumed he was referring to a black girl.
Look at this. Facts. Recorded video. Get these numbers. I'm out. I can't drop this mic. It's expensive.
No, it got me coughing. Number one, Wakanda is mad old and played out, so no more Wakanda jokes and Wakanda forever. Don't do no picture and hashtag Wakanda forever. We got it. And number two, unless you want to say you from the motherland.
I never said. Can white people say Wakanda forever?
Hell to no. Anyway, all jokes aside, it was a sense of validation because on the outside you would look at someone like my pastor and would think that, he's black. Again, what the heck does that even mean, blacker than someone else? But as far as the DNA proves, that's what it is. But even having to go to those lengths to try to find some sort of validation, I think would reveal my own insecurities.
You know what you should do to help that even more?
Go ahead. I feel watch Joe coming in 3, 2. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brandon.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the 23andMe thing, you still have like a printout or a picture somewhere.
Screenshot.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to make that into a T-shirt for yourself, man.
Yo,
it won't look right though.
Yeah, and
it won't look right though.
Sell them.
Sell them.
It's not gonna look
Sell
right.
them for all the albinos.
So you gotta
for
do
23
it's
bucks.
It's gotta be.
23.
See, that's why y'all got the corny swag. I'm not gonna put that on
Bro,
a
you
t-shirt,
got corny
bro.
swag.
Dude.
I'm not putting that on a t-shirt.
You just don't. Never mind.
And then just say, 88%.
88.
More blacker than you.
Black.
Whatever.
No, that's what I'm blacker than you. That's gonna be my thing.
Is
But
that 88% more woke?
again, don't you woke is no. We're not doing Wakanda forever. We're not doing woke.
I
Man,
didn't
you
go
so
Wakanda, bro.
outdated,
Leave it alone,
man.
bro. Gosh,
Yeah,
man.
it's like you hung around black people just for a little bit. Now you got to pick up a Wakanda
I wasn't born
and
in the
woke.
U.S. and Donald Trump might change the citizenship rules any moment, so I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize it.
Exactly, exactly. So, but
So many jokes. So little time.
but that definitely affected me. And even though I was found with so much validation and so much pride and knowing that, giving some sense of identity, what am I truly finding that identity in? Because even I think it affected me to the point where it's like I didn't want to mess with any like light-skinned girls because I didn't want my children to have to endure what I went through with the teasing and stuff. So even though I have a beautiful brown-skinned
She's gorgeous.
daughter and wife, I felt that it was just that idea, that thinking was so just backwards, and just again shows you the layers and the depths of racism where it's like, because I want to be a certain complexion that's going to validate my blackness and things like that. But even talking about relationships, both of you gentlemen are in interracial relationships.
And some might argue all three of us are.
I knew that joke was coming too. So you're smart. I knew that joke was coming.
Slap hands.
That was a great joke. That was a great joke. So yeah, all three of us are in interracial relationships. Haha. Before I even get there, because I don't know if we'll even have time to go there, but these guys are, no. What I wanted to do is we talk about terms but don't define them. How do you guys define racism? Because I think having racist jokes, is that necessarily racist? Or what do you define as racist, Bapo?
Go right ahead. No, let Roshan go first.
Go ahead, Roshan.
All right. So if someone makes a joke and I don't find it funny, it's racist.
Battery.
So
That's fine. We're just going to rock with that. Go ahead.
that's my standard.
Sorry,
That's it?
Someone says a joke and I don't laugh. That's racist.
So if I said, why did chicken cross the road?
That's racist.
Wow, bro, because the KFC was closed. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Wow, that's actually maybe kind of racist.
How?
KFC.
All right, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Have you been to
I'm from
Kentucky?
Kentucky. That doesn't mean I eat KFC, okay?
So
that's racist.
Let me ask you this question. Like, can I be like a little bit serious real quick?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna. Sorry for the derail.
No, I'm actually
Serious.
good.
Okay.
Serious.
Yeah.
So I had someone come up to me going, Bapo, because you're not from Cuba, you're not really Cuban.
Yeah.
And people, since you grew up in Kentucky,
Yeah.
I want to ask, like, do people even say because you grew up some years in Kentucky, you're not really Indian anymore?
It's funny. There's actually part of that there, totally within the culture or within our people group, where we have a name for those people. Kind of like, we hear these different names, right? So you call coconut, brown on the outside,
white inside.
That's one thing that we hear. We have a little abbreviation called ABCD.
Okay.
It stands for American Born Confused Desi. And Desi is just a small term for Indian person.
Okay.
And so the idea is that they call these Indian people ABCDs within the community.
Wow.
And the idea is these are the people who are born and raised here and don't have a strong touch with their culture.
Okay.
And so they're confused because they kind of can't put a foot in either culture properly. And so the idea is that I've been called that by other Indian folks, even my age and stuff, because I'm just like not Indian enough to where like I'm not like fully plugged in there. And so they make fun of me in that. But not so much from other people because, where I came from, I was Indian enough because there's not a whole lot of Indians there. So any kind of Indian is pretty Indian, So.
The reason why I asked that is because I recently came across some friends of mine who have been recently coming to me and saying, Bapo, you are Cuban. We see that, and we see you celebrate your culture and everything. But sometimes we see you announce to people that you're half Cuban, half white, Native American. And I ask them, like, so why does that matter? And it came across, or the tone of voice of that, because I'm half white, that kind of neglects the Cuban side.
Because you're stating that is showing as you not being as proud?
Or I'm not truly Cuban.
Oh. Okay.
So, like, it just kind of, like, there's, like, an undertone of racism there.
Yeah, that is odd, because how can someone else define your experience?
Exactly. And so to go back to your original question, Brandon, about how would you define racism, I think sometimes racism are prejudices acted upon. I think sometimes there are tendencies that we are prejudiced towards certain people, but we don't have to act on those assumptions. So I think that's something, but I think racism can be an attitude, a mindset, actions, verbal, emotional. And so, like, I remember when that person said it to me, I questioned a lot because I was like, is he stating that or is she stating that so that they can neglect my Cuban side and they can feel more comfortable if they crack? Oh, he's Cuban. Oh, he's just a water Mexican. Wow. I'm like,
A water?
yeah, man. There's
That's fire.
some people, like, everyone's really Mexican. They're just a Canadian, it's just a snow Mexican.
Wow.
I never heard that before.
And there's people who say that to me. You're just truly a Mexican, but water. And I was like, yo, bro. And
Wow.
can I keep it real?
Go ahead.
They're Christians.
Oh,
And I'm just
you
like,
gonna say something else?
no, they're Christians. I'm like, yo, fam, like, do you want to get these hands? But I can't say that to their face because there's other things I got to fight at the same time. And so when racism happens to me, whether it's in secular circles or Christian circles, because it does happen in Christianity, you got to love and forgive and be patient. But I think the struggle sometimes with responding to racism, blunt racism, is the one of the most difficult things, because as much as I want to celebrate my heritage and where I come from, I still have a mom at home, not living with me, but a mom who is insecure about her own self because she doesn't want me to lose where I come from, which is from her too. So I'm still Choctaw. I'm still somewhat Irish. When we did the little 23 thing,
You
Irish.
did it?
No, my sister did it for our family, and she was like, "We're like 2% Irish, like 4%, 14% Native American, and the rest is all Latino."
Okay.
So, yeah.
So no African American?
No, there is, but if you break down the African American portion, and this was years ago.
African, I should say.
When you break it down, the portion of Hispanic, there's African within it too.
But what percentage?
I don't remember. But
if he was above like 1%, then
lower than 88%, Brandon.
Well, no. I was just saying if he could
pause.
Actually, I don't know if I am. No,
I didn't want.
Wait. What did you just say?
There's clearly not a cameraman here.
What did you just say about the 1%?
I said if you are at least like over 5%.
You said don't move the line. Don't be like that because that's all.
I had to change it because some people could be 1%, and I don't know if I would feel comfortable with them doing Wakanda for. Look at this guy.
Problematic, Brandon.
No, but I mean that's
he's trying to, determine who you are by a percentage.
I know he is judging the Browns,
dude.
Once again,
dude.
Black
you the
people.
one who said Wakanda forever. I didn't know if you were able to.
I was quoting a Marvel quote,
but that's for black people.
No,
but no, it's fascinating. Hey, I didn't mean to derail. Yeah, I totally meant to derail earlier about the bad joke about what's racist. But for me, genuinely, what helped to kind of determine those terms for me has actually been exposed to me recently through the person you were bashing earlier, the pastor that you were talking about.
Bashing is a very good word to say.
I didn't bash you, pastor.
I'm looking right at you.
If you are listening to this, I wasn't bashing you. I was trying to show that you had a sense of humor.
Are you talking about off camera or off camera?
Huh?
All right. I'm going to bring it in.
Kidding.
All right. So, but something that he brought up that has been really helpful for me to kind of reflect on past experiences I've had when it comes to racially charged exchanges or conversations is there are 3 layers. The lowest layer being there's racial ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was dope how he did that.
Yeah. Then the next one was racial insensitivity, and then racial oppression, right?
Yeah.
I think those are the 3 layers.
Correct.
It was close to
Yeah, that was really good.
And that really helped me reflect a lot. And so, ignorance is where people just don't know, if you're not around black or brown people, you won't know like how they're different or how they're similar. And so you just assume everything is based off of your white experience. And then insensitivity is then taking that ignorance and then acting upon it, not realizing the consequences of it. And then oppression is where it is then institutionalized or made into law and stuff, which then turns into, large-scale discrimination and stuff. So for me, I feel like I've not really had a lot of the racial oppression on the large-scale level. And for me, a lot of my experience was mostly in the racial ignorance, and then it played out oftentimes on the insensitivity level. So.
Go ahead.
So when I asked this question, I wrote down the 3. So before we go wherever we're going to go with whatever you're going to say, how much grace do you give for those 3 different levels? Is there one that's more natural to give grace to than other? So when I ask
when I think of grace, I think of it as kind of giving someone, undeserved favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to kind of racial concerns and stuff, are there categories? Like when I'm talking to a fellow Christian, does it look different than when I'm talking to someone who's not, spiritually inclined to kind of believe the same things I believe? For me, I'll be honest, a lot of the exchanges and a lot of the problematic stuff actually comes from speaking with fellow Christians. Maybe it's because we press in deeper into each other's lives, and so our life and our background and experiences come out more. But I think grace, a lot of grace is needed a lot for the insensitivity and the oppression part, because oppression is where people just are so instinctively against people or certain ideas because they think it is liberal. What we as brown people may think as completely normal, reasonable things to think about, like immigration policy and thinking about the way we perceive people that come into this country. Just the tone of it changes when you kind of think about these people talking about large-scale systems. And that's where it's hard. I try on the ignorance level, it's easy for me to give grace. Because on the ignorance level, you don't know, you're not pretending to know, I can work with you where you're at. But when it comes to insensitivity and then to the top level where your actions, your choice to align this way, your choice to say your voice, my voice doesn't matter, affects how our people will survive in this country is where it's hard to give grace, because it's not just one person's decision. It's one person along with a whole community of people that think like that impact us as a group. So.
I appreciate that.
And we were talking a lot about grace and stuff. And for those people who are listening and watching, Elephant in the Room, I mentioned earlier that we all go to the same church. So we all share the same worldview, which is very unique, because we come from all, as you've been listening and watching, we all come from different backgrounds, but what we share in common is our faith. And I don't know how many conversations can be had if that isn't the center of it, because this is such an explosive topic that so many people would get angry and just want to fight and just not have a fruitful discussion. But I think, not to say that it's impossible to happen, but I think it's possible here because of what unites us is our faith. But it would behoove us not to discuss, especially here in America, how Christianity has been viewed in the lens of race. I was talking earlier how growing up and going through what I went through, I did not care too much about my own history because I didn't find validation in that. When I became a Christian, I was, just jumped headfirst into scripture, into theology, not so much church history, but I would love listening to, the Charles Spurgeons, the Jonathan Edwards, the Tozers, all these great men of the faith, and caring more about that, and just valuing theology a lot. And when I got saved, I went to a church, very great church, was foundational on the gospel, but it was a predominantly white church. And I think it was great for the time that I was in, but as I stayed there for like 8 years, but towards the tail end of the years, I could sense where they would be very hard on same-sex marriage, very hard on abortion, as most conservative evangelical Christians are in the South, would be hard and fast on those things. And this is right around the time where, and I hate saying the police killings because it's been always going on, throughout America. It's just now that we have phones, it's magnified, phones and social media, it's magnified more. So this has always been going on. But just right around those times where the police killing, and there would be no mention of it. It would be as if nothing happened, not to place any blame on anyone, but just to say, hey, let's pray. At the very least, do that. I would be satisfied with that when most black people be like, no, you should speak on this. But I was content with, let's pray for both parties involved. But it would be as if it didn't happen. So it's either we're ignoring it or we're turning a blind eye or we approve.
Yeah.
And so right around that time, I started to wrestle with these things where as I didn't value, my, I don't want to say cultural roots because I did, but Black history was not, tops on my list. Even when I was doing my research, I did not realize, the Voting Rights Acts of 1964. I was not aware of that. That was the year, sorry, Mom, when my mother was born. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
When that happened.
Yeah.
I was not aware of these things. I knew Martin Luther King, I knew Malcolm X, but I didn't know anything else, outside of that. And even when I became a Christian, not knowing that there were historical Black theologians. I remember having a book with St. Augustine on it, and he looked like a white guy.
But
and
he's not.
And as I'm learning, I'm seeing that, no, he wasn't white. And we are at a church where our pastor is very heavy on, trying to portray, scripture and have biblical accuracy and not just be like, there were black people in the Bible, but just trying to be represent what scripture actually teaches, that there were people of color there.
Example, gospel writer Mark is black.
Boom, mind blown. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You do a historical study of him. He's African American. Or African American,
Yeah,
sorry.
see?
African American. Stop.
you had to fact check this guy. Yeah.
Sorry, you know what? I'm going to fade away.
So you cut me off and then
know
that's what happens?
Stop.
That's what happens when you say Wakanda forever.
Then the question is, who's more black, Brandon or Mark? Sorry.
So you're trying to have a serious moment with these
but-
clowns.
no,
No, but
but-
no.
yeah,
I don't remember where I was, but so I became more conscious of that and starting to value my own Black history and wanting to dive deep into that, because as I would begin to do ministry, I'm around people from my culture, and most people, especially black people, black men, they already skeptical because, oh, you with this white Jesus, how you gonna follow a religion that they use to enslave us and all these things. And it's like, bruh, I heard the gospel. That's what I heard. Now I've got to shift through all these minefields and seeing what's going on, where you're right, bro. People use the Bible incorrectly. I'm not denying that. We've got to take responsibility. We, as I guess American Christianity, has to take responsibility for our injustices that we have done to minorities, particularly black people, because it hinders the gospel message. It absolutely hinders the gospel message. And earlier this week when we were preparing, and crazy thing about it is you were in Kentucky at Southern. Southern is a seminary, a Southern Baptist seminary, one of the first Southern Baptist seminaries. And the president, Albert Mohler, commissioned a research to delve into the history of Southern. It's how it was racist, and I forget and not just racism and slavery and all these things about the founders who founded the seminary. Yeah. And the research was showing some crazy things. Just a huge black eye that the founders, and I wish I had the things, now I'll probably post a link, that they owned slaves, that they would advocate racial injustice. And so we're sitting up here talking about race as Christians. Most people would listen and be like, but you guys follow this religion with the white man. No, we don't. Because we understand what the Bible actually teaches. But we're not going to ignore the fact that those who have called themselves Christians have done I don't even know what to call it. They have completely effed things up, completely messed things up. So we have a black eye, especially when it comes to American Christianity, when it comes to race, where we have people who would speak against those who are trying to pursue some sort of social justice and say that it's not the gospel, which we would agree, but it is an outworking of the gospel. Yeah. And go ahead, my bro.
No, I agree with you. Like, a lot of people, and I talked to my pastor about this, like the Black Lives Matter movement. So if some people don't know, I work with a lot of teenagers at our church, and they ask me, Bapo, like, what's your take on Black Lives Matter and everything? And one thing is, like, I support it because all lives do matter. And there's a tremendous struggle right now with the African American struggle, with police brutality and all that jazz. But it is a biblical foundational, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term I'll use right now. But it's based on biblical principles, but the way they kind of carried out is not truly Christian. So that's where the discussion has to be with the parents. Like, talk to your parents about this. But like, Black Lives Matter was a cool, great movement to bring awareness, but at the same time as that awareness was happening for Black Lives Matter, I want to ask you guys, did you guys hear Latino Lives Matter? Did you hear Hispanic Lives Matter? I'll wait.
You gonna get killed.
No, but it's like, it's a whole different perspective because it's been happening to us. Yeah. I don't know about for you guys, but I know it's Ton Roshan. It's been happening to Latinos, and the hard part is we can't bring that to the public because what's on top of fear of bringing up about police brutality? Deportation. Yeah. There's countless stories of a young lady in Denver, Colorado who got shot by police, and it's because she was wearing a hoodie and she looked like a male who just supposedly robbed a drugstore, finding out it was a white man who actually robbed the drugstore, but she got shot and killed, and the police was a whole situation, but like the family will refuse to go to the police because they were illegal immigrants. So they're afraid to speak on the daughter's death because they're afraid to get deported. Wow. Go ahead.
And even though I'm joking, even because you said all lives matter, so you definitely can't say Wakanda forever. But no, but in all jokes aside, I understand what Bapo was saying, and what we're getting at is that all humans have dignity and have honor and have respect. Yeah. So Black Lives Matter, the sentiment we can champion. But I always say we have to take it a step further and ask why. Because all people have dignity and respect. And I think the Black Lives Matter would combat and say, we're not saying that a Latino life doesn't matter or, Indian life doesn't matter. And I don't think that's what you were saying either. No, you're good. But I think it highlights a unique perspective where someone who is not a white person saying, hey, I feel you and your Black Lives Matter, but in order to, have that stance, you can't necessarily ignore us either. And I don't know if I wouldn't say that they're ignoring it, but I don't know if you are seeing some sort of contradiction, and I don't want to misread you, but are you seeing some sort of contradiction?
From white people?
Or just from when the Black Lives Matter, when it doesn't seem like, because like you just gave that story. I don't know how many of the Black Lives people are talking about that story.
No, I think the interesting part for what I heard through this whole discussion of Black Lives Matter is who also was talking about it in African American circles.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to see people who were 40 or above really didn't care and they were Black. That was really a shocker to me.
Yeah.
But I think the struggle too, and for my white brothers and sisters who listen to this podcast, please know we love you. I love my mom. She's a Christian. She's white. Love her to death. But the reality is that sometimes there are people who are claiming Christianity who do not look clearly at that imago Dei of people and choose racism as oppression. And the reality is that they oppress people both systemically, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then even culturally. And so if you're hearing this, please know we love you. And there's some people who are not like that. There's some people who, quote unquote, if we want to use this word, woke. But the reality is that there's people who understand, who are woken to the gospel message of Jesus Christ, who value the imago Dei of everyone. And I think sometimes when we talk about just Black Lives Matter or whatever, Latinos matter, like we need to understand, we need to show that through the lens of the gospel. That's why I say all lives matter.
Mm-hmm. And I guess to you, Roshan, piggybacking off of that, I think even we were talking about the election and trying to find, and I hate to say safe space because you've already said problematic, super liberal words, but it's cool though. But I was asking where you can find some sort of comfort and security when all the election stuff was going on, where it seemed as if all the closeted racists, they were emboldened, and having to deal with that in a completely red state like Kentucky. And I was asking, like, where could you find like safety, or not safety, but just a place where you can find comfort and just have dialogue. And as a Christian, the place should be the church,
right?
And because as someone who is from where you're from, religion is a huge identity, and correct me if I'm wrong. What is I guess Buddhism, Hinduism, or just Muslim?
Yep.
Those is where those from your cultural context would find some sort of safety, especially during these times. Yep. But as a Christian, you're not clearly going to the temple. You're not going to the mosque. Right. You want to go to the church, but running to the church, these are the people who are supporting this person who spews this racist ideology. Yeah. But it's like, but you're supposed to be a Christian. How did you wrestle with that?
It was very tough. It was very tough, and it was part of why I didn't believe that I could continue to live in Kentucky long term, because it was a very lonely season for me. Yeah. It was the sense of kind of, I just had no avenue to engage except for going online. Yeah. Like I had to find my way through specific groups that were set for people of color and believers, Christians of color, that I could have these conversations with, because, there would be crazy, incendiary, extreme things said, from certain people, figures, or just ideas were entertained, and especially when you live in a very kind of one-party or one-sided kind of environment where that is the norm, like to try to have a conversation that's more nuanced, it's very hard. Yeah. And honestly, it's just a matter of I didn't have a whole lot of people around that wanted to listen. There are a lot of people willing to talk, and this is part of my experience as an immigrant here, is I found among white majority culture, most of my experience, people were happy, even people who are well-meaning and intended, I have respect for, and I am grateful for people's input in my life, but I always noticed that the intent to kind of engage was always one way. The one way being, let me teach you, let me instruct you, let me get you in a place, let me improve you. But I very rarely, if ever, saw ways that others try to engage in that. What can we learn from you with your experience? as the foreigner coming in, as the immigrant that now is part of our country. Like, how can your experiences change my mind or inform my perspective? And that was where my struggle was. Is I just didn't have those kind of conversations there. And I have that now, and I'm grateful for that now. But I think it was important for me to move to a place where, as a person of color, I'm not, in a handful of people that I can say are not white,
How did that affect your faith though? Because like I said, so many in I guess my community, they would see, black people, Christians, white Christians supporting slavery, white Christians supporting Jim Crow, supporting or fighting against, the civil rights movement. Again, going back to the article about Southern Seminary, they actively opposed any kind of integration. And even for me, I'm at a seminary where, if I'm having my facts straight, so Southern Seminary started integration in 1940, and the first graduate happened 1944, I think, somewhere around there. Again, that's not that long ago. Yeah. And so most black people who would see that and is looking at me like you're a walking contradiction. How can you be a part of some place that has a history of this sort of racism where they're not, I don't want to say accepting of you, but don't even practice what they preach. Yeah. So for going through that experience, and like I said, you're in Kentucky, you're the heart of it.
Yeah. Louisville is also home to the NRA.
Oh, the NRA.
Yeah.
I don't know my history but I know I don't even want to go there.
They have a thriving chapter of the
KKK. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, but I didn't.
To the university there to do rallies and stuff in the past. Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't have enough knowledge to speak, but I've heard stuff about Kentucky and things like that. No disrespect to Kentucky, I'm sure some great people there. But how did that?
You can't spell Kentucky without K. It's just missing the third K somewhere.
That was Roshan.
People are gonna
that was Roshan.
Hate me.
But how did that affect your faith? Because you gave me instances of, hey, I just need to relocate. Did that shake your faith where it's I can't rock with this Christian stuff because they don't even live out what, they're teaching?
Before you answer that, let me ask a question. Yeah. Were you a Christian your whole life?
No.
No one's a Christian their whole life.
We are the church.
You had great theology, bro.
Calvinist.
No, I was not brought up super religiously, especially being in Saudi Arabia. It's hard to be religious if you're not Muslim.
Okay.
There. For me, my faith in Christ started at age 17, right before my senior year of high school.
The reason I want to ask that is just because it'd be interesting if you were something else beforehand.
Yeah.
And then you had this situation with the racism and the whole presidential thing, your faith.
Sure. No.
Would you bounce back?
Yeah. For me, spiritually growing up, my parents come from what's considered the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition. So very much like Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was not strongly raised in that to where it was a part of my identity.
Okay.
So I grew up more spiritually agnostic, really.
Okay.
Just not really holding on to anything. But going back to how kind of this posed as a challenge of faith for me, especially around the election season and stuff like that, it was tough. It was very tough, and I think I look at that as kind of one of my kind of darker seasons, I guess, where I felt that loneliness. I remember in the community group I used to attend back there, towards the end of year 2016, we were looking back on the year, and kind of we were wanting to, each person was encouraged to share kind of some verse or some section of the Bible that encouraged, that highlighted kind of something that was on our hearts. And so for me, it was reading the Book of Lamentations.
Mm.
And the Book of Lamentations just kind of really, you saw kind of the agony and the sadness and the
lamenting,
the dark place, the lament of the Israeli people, And when I was sharing that, another person in the community group brought up how the context is even more relevant because it was when the Israelis were in Babylon.
Yeah.
I think, if I'm remembering right.
You're
and
right.
The idea is that they feel like foreigners there, and that's part of their sentiment. So maybe that was part of why it connected deeper.
Yeah.
But it was hard, and honestly, I think it was through the resources that I had online and through the community I was able to foster at some level virtually that made it possible to be this shouldn't turn into me walking away from Christianity. This should not be my only experience. And I'm grateful that the internet allowed for communities, and shout out to the Pass the Mic Facebook group.
Hey, by the
that
Witness.
Was a big community.
Yeah, I love that
yes,
website,
by
bro.
the Witness. There I met a network of people that made it to where I'm not alone in being a brown person who wants to be a follower of Christ.
Yeah.
And had it not been for that, I feel like I'm already pretty jaded, honestly. I leave with that experience and leave kind of my experience with Kentucky kind of with a lot of hurt, honestly, that I don't think will go away. I'm just grateful God delivered me out of that.
Amen.
But the truth is that I'm grateful for the blessing that he did give through people online, at least, to be like,
open.
This sucks, but at least I have people that are also in that group, so.
Nah, man. I definitely wanted to make sure we covered that because we're having the conversation about racism, but again, what unites us is our faith, and to ignore that aspect of it is our history, even though we didn't necessarily participate in those actions, but those are our brothers and sisters in Christ as much as we want to smack one side the head. Are you raising your hand?
Bapo.
So let me
heads up on an audio podcast. Raising your hand doesn't translate.
What does that do?
You just got to speak up, man.
I want to say, I raised my hand, so I want you to finish your statement first. I don't want to be rude and cut you out. That's all.
That's what that means. Okay.
Anyway,
great radio, guys.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Give us 5 stars
Go ahead,
on
Bapo.
Uber.
This is your cue.
Thank you. I want to ask you a question because I want to give a perspective of mine. I'd like to get your perspective too. Of what?
Go ahead, finish.
You were just in the middle of sharing something, and now you're starting a conversation.
Just
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, impossible. All right. So, what is your take in regards to being brown of how the church should respond to a lot of racism that brown people have seen? Because we've heard a lot from African Americans and blacks. Praise God for that. And we heard some rebuttal from whites, and they're still trying to figure it out, I think, is the best way I can say it politely. But from your perspective, and I'll share with mine, what do you think is a good, healthy response to brown people that both African Americans and whites of the church should look at?
Sure. I mean, for me, I think it just starts at just empower, and I don't like the word empower, build systems and build opportunities for brown folks who are super minority in some ways, by being minority compared to even other minorities, to from our community or from the Latino community, to have avenues to speak and to be listened to. I think that has to be intentionally built in. That cannot just be something that we'll wait for the right brown person to come and inject themselves. It shouldn't be something that we wait for gravity to do the job. I feel like the church institutionally should build that in, whether it be, and that is on layers of leadership from top to bottom, but, that needs to be like, because if you don't, it's assumed that that's not an issue worth fighting. And it's easier maybe in a place like Vision that's multi-ethnic and very diverse compared to the average Christian church. It's easier there because those conversations, I'm grateful those conversations are happening because, it is a majority black church, at least originated as such. But that needs to be a part. And that's my take on it, is that has to not be assumed. It has to be built.
I agree.
So, what about you? What were you going to share?
I think for me, as I contemplate about this topic, like when people come asking about, but what's your take on the whole black and white situation in America? How would you respond? I mean, the biggest thing I always tell people is like, at least you guys are invited to the table. And when I say that, I mean like the table discussion, because for a long time, and I would probably say about maybe 20 years, this discussion has been just whites and blacks only. Very ignored to the browns and the yellows. And so I think that hurt a lot more than people can understand.
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things sometimes, and I love my church, I love the churches I served at and I worship at, it's hard to walk in and to be invisible and visible and invisible all at the same time. And I meant to say twice invisible. Because there's sometimes I can walk into church and I'm just invisible to the crowd because I'm not the dominant or the minority of the dominant culture. So like being a brown within a black church or brown within a white church, I'm still a minority within a minority.
Yeah.
That's hard. So that's why I say it sucks to feel invisible.
Sure.
But I think also it sucks to be visible because I'm also limited to, I'm the token brown guy.
Yeah.
Or, Bapo, you're Cuban. Praise God for that. You speak Spanish. Que hola. Get all. Let's do this, bro.
Yeah.
Why don't you reach the Hispanic guy down the road?
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, bro, that's great. Why didn't you do that before I showed up?
Yeah.
Like real talk.
Yeah.
Because by you telling system, how you say that word?
Systemic.
Thank you. I'm sorry. English is weird. Systemically, by you doing that, you're creating racism again.
Yeah.
In a sense, segregation, the culture, and the church, where only Latinos should go talk to Latinos.
Yep.
And you have that one hybrid freak who just loves Latinos, who might be white, who might be black, and then they become outcasted because they're no longer. So I think the way to begin this process is repentance, like a lot of repentance and true repentance, but at the same time, acceptance and listening. Yeah. Because I love black people. Please do not get offended by what I'm about to say. Because I champion you, because I will not be able, in my opinion, Roshan.
Don't look at him when you say that.
Roshan, what?
You're talking about champion black people and you're looking at Roshan.
Because I'm about to, you'll see.
Okay.
I would champion African Americans, their struggles in America, because we will not be able to sit at this table today without your help, without your fight. So I will say thank you for that. But the flip side, let us speak. I think black people can understand to some extent our struggle, but they don't. And I think you need to let the voices of brown people be spoken and herald, so that we can learn together, reflect the kingdom of God.
Sure. Well, here's my thing, and maybe this will kind of reflect more about maybe where we agree or where we differ.
Okay.
Do you think you're better off being at a church that has a substantially more black community than you would at a predominantly white church?
Do you think it'd be beneficial for me?
If it is, assuming you've been in a predominantly white church setting.
So yes, I've been in predominantly white churches. So you're stating, is it beneficial for me to be in one of those?
Basically, do you see a difference in experience?
Oh, heck yeah.
And
overwhelming.
Yeah. And okay, then in follow-up to that, do you think that the logical progression is the ideal setting for you would be to be in a predominantly Latino church? Why or why not? Because that, the argument, go ahead and share that, because I'll share as to where I'm coming from with that.
It's a good question.
Because I asked that of myself. I asked that of myself, is if I want my voice heard, is the place for me to go to the church of my community? And if so, my question is, why would I go to a church that's not in my community? Like I'm kind of see if there's any kind of take on yours.
That's a heck of a question.
Yeah.
I think for me, the reason why I go and serve at a predominantly African American church is because I love the people there. I love the people of the white churches I worship and served at too. Some of my deepest friends are from those churches. I think the reason why the Lord hasn't called me, I hope He does, call me to a Latino church, is because I think I'm in a season where I'm supposed to be here at Vision.
Okay.
And I praise God for that, because I think every church I've been to, there has been experience and growth that I need to learn from them.
Sure.
I hope that answers your question. I don't know.
Yeah. And I can see that maybe it's more of a personal God's call for you to be at the church that you're in. I only ask that because for me, the way I think about it is, I do think, I can be there with you in that, yes, I can feel like sometimes the conversation around race can be kind of centered around the largest minority group in the country, right? But I don't necessarily feel, and maybe I'm misinterpreting part of you, and I don't want to be uncharitable to you, but I don't want it to be like an Olympics, oppression Olympics kind of situation where like I'm trying to compete with my other fellow minorities who are having different struggles than me.
Correct.
For the same podium, or for the same mic. Instead I think of it as let's have more mics, as opposed to us competing for the same mic. Let's just have more mics to be able to have the discussion. And for me personally, I as of right now, I cannot say that going to an all Indian church would be the solution for me.
I agree.
Because for me, and just knowing at least the experiences I've had with Indian communities, we can be very insular. We can be very isolationist.
I agree.
Where basically we're not out there to try and change and transform culture. We're just trying to get by enough to have everything we want within the system we want. You know, you go to a city like New York, you can go to certain parts, you know, that are predominantly Indian or Pakistani, never have to speak a lick of English.
Correct.
And live there the whole your life, almost never, except for maybe where you have to for work, never meet a non-brown person, non-Desi person. And I don't know, for me, if that's a solution. Because I'd rather press into a setting where I'm around people that are not like me and be challenged by that than not be there. But that being said, I don't think for me it's in a predominantly white setting.
So I agree with the majority of what you're saying. I would just add one more thing too. I think we discussed this off camera before, but and maybe this is for you too. There's not a lot of Latino churches in America that have theology sound.
Okay, yeah.
That have a Christianity background.
Yeah.
I am Reformed, praise God for that. But I think their churches are like, when I was talking to some pastors, won't name drop, that state that the Reformation hasn't hit Latin America.
Sure.
So that's why there's not a lot of churches for me to like, oh, Babito, this is like, they're singing, I can go, I can hear I don't see that.
Sure.
Don't get twisted, there are churches out there,
Sure.
but I think there's also that sense of, I don't know if I go there, I'll be fed.
Sure.
And I agree the biggest part what you said was we can go to an African-American church or a white church where we're able to be an extra microphone there. Praise God, that's why I said champion in the beginning of African-Americans to be that mouthpiece for us. But at the same time, I think those are probably the better circles for us to speak into than our own brown cultures as of now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not to toot my own horn, I've got you guys some microphones.
Yes, you did. You got a third mic just for one of us.
All I need is one mic.
The question, Brandon, is who is mic 2 and who's mic 3? Think very carefully who you call mic 2 and who you call mic 3.
This is easy.
No.
Oh, dang.
Jeremy. Black people forever.
Let's give a shout out to Jeremy helping us with the camera
let's
work,
give a huge shout out to Jeremy, who is helping out with the audio and video. So if you're watching and you see me like stand up, that's because the battery's going out and I'm replacing it. So, but it's been great because you guys have said it, and I don't want to have to reiterate it because it sounds like I'm giving myself a pat on the back, but I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to speak. So even though those who are listening be like, yo, why isn't Brandon talking that much? That was the purpose. I didn't want to talk that much. Even how we're positioned, and I think I kind of like the position because I don't want the focus to be on me. I want the focus to be on you guys and highlighting you because, again, I don't want to just make generalizations, but you guys have said it yourself that there's not much of a voice that's given to you guys in this conversation on racism. And I've seen that. And like I said, I'm able to see it because I understand how my own experience is that we become just very ethnocentric and don't even realize that in our effort to, champion ourselves, we become just like our oppressor. Go ahead.
I want to ask a question, but just to go back to a conversation to bring full circle. Yeah. First off, are we good on time?
I'm Gucci, but like I said, we can keep recording because the cameras are going out, but I'm fine. Like I said, we already came into this discussion knowing that we would have a lot to talk about.
Right.
Have a whole lot to talk about. We were wanting to break it up into segments, but just how things are going. So hopefully the conversation can continue. Yeah. Hopefully we're just starting a conversation that will happen more. So I'm fine. We can keep rocking, but not, like I said, just wanting to give you guys a voice and not just, again, to just be my token friends who happen to be brown, but no, like actually doing what you guys have said, giving you a mic, giving you a voice. I want to be someone who's doing that.
So he's mic 3 then. So we can figure out what 1 and 2 are.
There you go.
A little pat on yourself in the back. Okay, so here's a question to kind of go back to a conversation at the beginning. We're all mixed couples here. I'm sorry, no, just us two. He's just really albino. albino. Anyways,
You see this racism? They
it's
call
not
me
racism.
Yes, it is.
It's not racism.
You know, there's
albino is a form shade of black. Wakanda
No, it's
forever.
not. You're wrong because white people can be
right.
albino.
I'm right.
Hispanic people can be albino. Indian people can be albino.
Bapo, you're not earning your
There you go.
request
Exactly.
to get a mic by
Look at you.
saying
Only
problematic
black
stuff like
people can be albino. Look at you.
Can black people be racist? Next question. Anyways, no, here's a serious question. I want to know. So, for those who don't know, I am single, dating a young lady. Pursuing a young lady who's African American, and then you're married to white. I don't want to be rude. I just don't know.
Yeah, she's white. In terms of her heritage, if you had to really pinpoint, kind of Polish, Lithuanian.
Word.
She has a grandma who's from Poland, I think, or
Cool.
great grandma who's from Poland.
Cool.
But white.
Okay, so we have the discussion of racism, discussion of Christianity. Think about for those who are in the quote unquote swirl ministry, which are you're welcome.
I'm sorry, what?
The swirl ministry, in a sense,
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, you guys.
Use your imagination, bro.
Okay.
No, bro, like
Never mind.
half chocolate, half vanilla ice cream. So like it's mixed.
Oh,
But one like you're a swirl ministry. Congratulations, bro. If you don't know, he's still shocked.
Oh, swirl.
Swirl.
What you thought he said?
A squirrel?
I thought you were saying swole, and I'm like, I think that
whoa.
means.
I'm like, you didn't get the swirl
That
ministry?
was dope, bro.
Okay.
That was like alley-oop for a
right.
great segment.
That really was.
All right. Yes, swirl. Got it.
We should make shirts. Anyways,
No.
That would be
No.
that would be such a bad idea.
so in regards to you and I'll talk about what I've been going through.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about as a married man, praise God for that marriage. But how are you pursuing your wife? Different cultures
all
coming
super
together.
theological over here. How do you pursue? Go ahead, my bad.
I can be hood.
Go ahead.
I don't think this would be appropriate.
Okay, see, gosh, she's
So
gonna be
anyways.
hood.
So that's not ghetto, bro.
All right, whatever. Go ahead.
Bro, I can't say that. Anyways, dude, I can't. I gotta be careful.
You're really
Let
competing
it go.
for.
Let it
Anyways,
go.
so how are you pursuing your wife and everything
Yeah.
as marriage, racism, all that jazz, Christianity, culture? Go.
Sure. No, that's a great question. So, yeah, my wife and I, we've been married 6 years at this point.
Praise God.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a blessing. But I'll be honest, I think part of living in Kentucky, and we met as college students at the University of Louisville in Kentucky.
What was the first thing you thought of when you saw her?
We was wondering, well, actually, okay.
I was trying to help you out, but
I appreciate about how I'd like to get to know her a lot more, because we were friends the whole first year before we started dating, so it didn't start kind of with a romantic attraction. Just
No
full
Marvin
disclosure,
Gaye.
you know.
No Jackson 5, no Genuine.
You'll get your chance.
Never mind. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but for me, you just got to think with the environment and with kind of the setting. Those conversations just didn't happen a whole lot. And for me, I met her in my year 3 of being here. So just finished 2 years of living here. So
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky, USA, just in the US in general. So we met as freshmen, and we just kind of were friends a whole lot. We hung out. We were in the same, involved with the same campus ministry at the school, and we just kind of were in the same Bible study together, and we just kind of hung out in a group setting a whole lot. So I got to know her a whole lot that way. And then we started dating and stuff, and the cultural conversations and cultural challenges I faced, I didn't feel come up a whole lot between us. And I think part of it is because she comes from a place where she has had not a lot of exposure. I was the first Indian that she has met in person. And so, but I think what made it not a hindrance is that she was kind of open to listening. And she did not presume to know everything, and she did not presume to have the right answers,
Praise God.
I'm going to cut you off, but I just had an interesting question. Like, did you have, like I said, for me, I had a preference for, I've only been with black girls. That's even been with this loosely. But I don't overcompensate. For facts. You're right. And I guess I didn't really grow up around a whole bunch of white girls either. But did you ever have preference? Did you prefer a white girl over an Indian girl, or you just didn't meet any other Indian girls?
Was she your white girl? Only white girl?
Okay, hang on. We're not gonna go through dating history here.
Bro, we have a limited
6 years
time
into marriage,
also.
you know, it's a part of my history that's irrelevant.
Before Christ.
It's not very interesting either, spoiler alert. But anyway, all that to say, you know, I love my wife, and I think God chose her for me and everything, so I don't have any reservations saying that, you know? But, you know, when you talk about demographics, yeah, Kentucky's not a very diverse place, so there's not a whole lot of, you know, quote unquote choice of different types of people. Anyway.
But it wasn't a sense like I don't like, or I don't want to say thought a white person was more preferable than an Indian. That wasn't the case. It was just that was what was there.
It was the default because here's the big thing. The big thing for me was I was a Christian at this point, and I wanted to pursue someone who was serious in the faith.
So that was the biggest thing for you.
And guess what? If you are interested in romantically pursuing a Christian girl in Kentucky, you're not gonna run into any brown girls, anytime soon. So all that to say, just by virtue of elimination, my spirituality and my faith is most important.
Praise God.
That guided
Praise
everything
God.
else.
Okay.
And that, by virtue of that, made kind of...
Look at God taking care of us.
I know, right?
Man, look at that.
That was beautiful. I'm going to cut this clip just for Rebecca. Sorry, I didn't mean to put your name.
Frame it all correctly, right? I framed it all
Is that the
correctly.
script says right in front of you?
That was beautiful. But the reason that I asked that is because I think, and again, are we calling this racist? That I did not prefer white women, or I didn't mind Spanish, but that wasn't something that I found appealing to me. But if another race were to say that about another race, it would be like, oh, hell would break loose. But
you ready for this?
Go ahead.
So, are we done with him?
We'll go with that. Yeah, but all in terms of our relationship and our marriage and stuff, the big thing to share is that kind of like how I believe, white majority spaces just need to be listening more. Like, she was not that typical white person in the sense that she came in with an arrogance of knowing already these things. One of the things you'll get to about her if you know her, or if you get to know her, she's very humble, down to earth,
she is,
and puts others before herself, and that I don't think a relationship that was interracial would work unless there was someone like that coming in, especially from the majority culture.
I agree with your statement about description of her. The only thing I disagree with that is when we play Mario Kart, she will put no one in front of you but destroy you.
Yeah. There's no putting others in front of her in that, man. She'll wreck you in that. That's all of her whiteness, kind of. She's nice every other way, so her quote unquote oppression is in Mario Kart alone.
No, she is a phenomenal young lady, bro. She really is. Ever since I first met her serving at the church, I was like, who is this chick? And you just saw this humility of just oozing out of her. Then I saw you two guys together and you guys were glowing. I was like, yo, praise God. That was just a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Well, what about I feel like your situation could be more interesting because, you're a brown person and the lady you're dating is black, and so like there's a whole different dynamic.
What? I'm just kidding.
I assume. I mean, I've seen a picture. I don't want to
She's been to church.
I've not met her. She's never been to church when we've been there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, otherwise, I promise we would have met her. Bapo or Becca would know if Bapo's girl was in town.
Yeah. So let me give you a little preface, okay? This is gonna be interesting, okay? This is why it tells you when I'm dating a black girl, it's kind of really a shocker to my family. In the Hispanic culture, there's a huge, and this goes back decades and decades, of a Latino is supposed to come to America, find a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl, and get married.
Wow.
People don't see how this has been woven into our culture. I'm going to point two big things that people just skip over, but you just don't see it. Before the show started, I played some music on, and I was joking around listening to Cuban Pete that Jim Carrey did in the movie The Mask. Phenomenal song. But it's a throwback to a TV show. Does anybody know what the TV show is?
I Love Lucy.
I Love Lucy.
I was just making that up.
No, for real. Ricardo is Cuban American, pursuing married to a girl named Lucy. Phenomenal show, funny to old people. If you love it, sorry. Anyways, but
Becca knows about it.
So, but you think about it, is a Cuban American fall in love with a white woman. That was kind of the dream.
I never realized it was like an implicit kind of goal.
I'm gonna take it a step further that people really don't see it with. Okay, was considered one of the top gangster movies of all time.
Scarface.
What did Tony Montana want to marry? Blonde hair, blue eyes, Michelle Pfeiffer, because that was a dream. If you saw his right hand man, who's Colombian or Cuban Colombian, he's looking for any other chick on the fly. But there was this woven within the Cuban culture and Hispanic culture. You made it when you married a blonde hair, blue eyes woman. Guess what my mom is? Blonde hair, brown, blue eyes woman. Wow. So it was really interesting to see this, and my dad would kind of engrave into me whenever I saw him, this is the type of chick you need to marry to be accepted, to be wanted in the culture. So for my first girlfriend ever, her name was Sade. Guess what race she was? Black. My family was like, it's just a young thing, it probably won't mean anything. What?
Just out of curiosity, what was her complexion?
Sade,
because I feel like you have a type, but go ahead.
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay. All right.
No, because what's that face? I don't want to say Rihanna skin tone, but that's the closest thing I think of.
Okay, so she was brown skin.
She was brown skin. Yeah, she was definitely brown.
Okay.
So
you didn't, again, going back to the colorism issue, like you like black girls, but you
pause. Take the first word out. What'd you say?
You liked black.
Take that word out. Not complete the sentence.
Huh?
Not complete the sentence.
You like girls?
That was my deal. Like, I'm being kind of serious with that, because people are like, oh, you like a particular type of girl. It's like, no, I like women. I just saw a fine piece of woman. I was like, I want that. Just being dead serious right now, right? So when my family saw women who I dated, they're like, nothing makes sense. The only thing that made sense is no one had a big forehead. So I just had that struggle of trying to find a girl. Now, when I became a Christian, the hard part was to find a girl who would accept me, especially with my sin and my past. Didn't matter if you're white, it didn't matter if you're black, didn't Latina, doesn't matter. But the one thing I started noticing was, this is horrible, but this is really me. I was like, who is the quickest out of the three main races that I can find trust or build trust easiest? And I was like, black girls, my opinion. Shake your head, but I might be right. I might be right once in a while.
Well, black women will hold you down if that's what you're trying to say. You got to.
No.
That's not what you mean?
What do you mean?
Hold you down, like ride with you?
No. Yes, but I hold you down means two different things to me. Hold you down means holding me back. That's why I was like, hold you mean.
So you was talking about the hood. You ain't hood, bro. Now go ahead.
So black girls for me they are the hardest group to gain trust from. But once you gain trust from them, they're ride or die for life.
Okay. All right.
White girls are complete opposite. Whereas they're the easiest girls you can get trust in.
We have our expert person who knows white women. What do you have to say about that, Roshan?
I'm writing all these generalizations down. How to categorically put all of one group into one statement.
But then
I'll go and tell my wife and see if it works.
But for me, like, this was the sad perspective I thought through. And Latinos was just perfect meeting of both. And so, like, I started thinking, like, okay, what was I looking for? A girl. And then what I was attracted to. But then it just realization was just, I wanted a beautiful woman who loved the Lord, who accepted me and wanted me. So when I started dating my girlfriend now, and previous girls too, who were African American or white, there was a constant struggle of me wanting to ask them out because I knew the parents wouldn't like me from the jump because I was Latino. Where I know from verbalization, conversations of parents to my face saying, you're not good enough for my daughter.
Wow.
And you haven't met me. When they heard my name was Kyle, they expected this white boy walking in with a pillow or polo. For some people don't know what that means.
Pilo.
Some people don't know what polos mean. But walking in, and then they see this Cuban American, and they're like, yeah, you ain't good enough for my daughter. I actually heard a father say, I know you're kind. You're going to lie and cheat on my daughter. You do not have my blessing to talk to her.
And this is with a black chick?
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't know.
So I mean, and it's a guy from New York.
But that's what I mean. It's more acceptable than there.
But it was just tough to be like wanting to date blacks or whites because of just the prejudice the parents have. And then the hard part is, how do I pursue a young lady, even my current girlfriend, phenomenal, amazing chick. But I know there can be tendencies from parents saying like, he won't be good enough for you because he's not black. So if this girl falls in love with me, how to deal with that tension? Just don't know. Yeah. And then the hard part too was the young lady Yuri. She came to Raleigh. She got to visit me, visit my church, visit my friends. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but when she visited the church, she got taken back because she saw other African American women, males, celebrating and worshiping God together at a church that she felt comfortable with. She doesn't get that often.
No, it's rare what we have, man.
It's weird.
I don't think you know how well.
I keep telling this to our pastor, but we're a unicorn.
Yeah,
he was like, "Don't call us. We're a special unicorn." But I think I had to take like perspectives, like when pursuing her, there are things I had to think about that to shield from even blatant racism with people in North Carolina. There's certain people I don't bring her around because I'm afraid of her being judged. Like, I go back to the initial comment I said, it is one of the worst feelings in the world when you walk into a room and people are Christians and they look at you and they think you're white or they think you're a different race. And you're like, no, I'm Cuban. And they're like, oh, I guess we're good now. I can walk away. And that happened at seminary. Mm-hmm. The place I thought this shouldn't happen. And as even within our own church, at the church I serve at, this happens too. And I love people. I give grace. You gotta help them see their blindness. And I think the hard part is there's a teenager at church. They hate the color of their skin because they felt their life would be more better if they had a different color of skin, whether it was black, white, or Latino. And we have to remember what Psalms says, that we were fearfully, wonderfully made purposefully with our skin tones, with the brown and the blacks and the white and the yellow. We're all purposely made. So God chose me to be Cuban, you to be Indian, you to be black for his glory. Yeah. And when I start to see myself in that light, that my skin tone was for God's glory to be flossed or to be shown, I learned to accept my skin and be okay. Yeah. For those who are listening to this podcast who are dealing with some hurt because of your skin tone, who want to change themselves, understand that you're fearfully, wonderfully made in the image of God, exactly the way you are. Then when you look at the reflection in that mirror, understand God is proud and joyful and celebrating because that's what he chose to craft to reflect him in you.
Yeah, it's a great word, man. It's a good word. Yeah. That's kind of what I would charge kind of people who are listening to this, is just be more willing to listen, like, and not just passively listen, like seek that out. Yeah. Like if you're in a predominantly white kind of setting and maybe you're white yourself, like those conversations aren't going to happen on their own. And, like don't put the burden on the one black or brown person that may be there in your vicinity to kind of bring that up and to parse it out for you. Like they, are a treasure, and like the fact that there are black and brown people who are willing to sit in predominantly white settings despite kind of being marginalized. Yeah. It's tough. It's something that I did, and I don't know if, I'm kind of called to that. I pray that if I have to be in that setting again, that God will give me the grace to get through that. But, I ask for people who are in settings, whether it be churches or other places, to be like seeking out to put a mic in front of those people, to give them kind of the voice, that would be kind of my call to the people listening.
And I would say, and I learned this from my Hispanic brother Angel, and happy birthday to him. I know he'll never listen to this, but happy birthday to him. We'll probably get him to listen to this. Anyways, one thing he said to me was like, sometimes brown people are more like Paul than what black might be to Peter or fill the blank. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, because of brown people can learn to be in different circles easy, they can become all things to all men.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's something beautiful, that our skin tone and our accents or our heritage, our proud father to create us the way we did, allow us to experience.
Man,
we like you too, Brandon.
Yeah, so back to Brandon. Yeah.
Nah, it's been phenomenal. Like I said, when I originally thought of the topic and just having you guys, I did not think we would be able to produce this amount of good content. And like I said, wanting to, despite all of the jokes, and hopefully, like I said, we want this to be engaging. So even though we're cracking jokes on each other, we want that engagement effect, but don't miss what we're actually trying to say here, because we've touched on some very, very important issues, whether it's just our own experiences, trying to define racism, because we talk about racism a lot but never really define it. And I'm going to try to post our pastor's sermon on it, because I think he did a phenomenal job on it and breaking it down, just talking about just racism as Christians and dealing with that and being willing to go there, because most of us would rather ignore it. And it's like, no, I'm not ignoring it. I understand the past of, the domination I went to school at. I don't necessarily consider myself Southern Baptist, but if I go to a Southern Baptist seminary, then that's what most people will view me as. So I get it. And just want to be open and honest about that. And even, like I said, the name of the podcast is You're Doing It Wrong. And like I said, I can openly admit that I've done it wrong from just ignoring my own history because of the things that I've experienced, or wanting to be with a darker skinned woman because I don't want my kids to have to endure what I want to. Just the backwards thinking that's been ingrained in us, and realizing, man, this is not just a plight of black people, the Latinos and those in the Middle East. It's just like, we have to have a global perspective on this racism thing, because it just becomes, the white man is the devil, the white man is evil. And what that causes us to do is put guilt on them without seeing guilt on ourselves, that we all share some blame, maybe not to the same extent, but we share blame in all of it as well. And we have to realize that this is deeply rooted, not just societal, not just that, but deeply rooted, ingrained in the nature and humanity of us, and that there's nothing that can cure that, no law, no nothing that we can do. Not to say that we shouldn't fight for equality, because and that was the thing that we're bringing up. We should be able to stand arms in arms. It shouldn't just be, I'm only caring about black people issues because it's like you want other people to care about your issues.
That's very
we should be it's not that either or. I can be conscious of what's going on with black people, and also be and like I said, I had to, when you guys were telling me about, just the deportation, that's going in one ear and out the other, because it doesn't affect me, but it deeply affects you guys. Yeah. And it's like, that's an ignorance on my part, not to be like, yo, my brothers, these are something that's near and dear to their heart, that they have family, they got loved ones that are truly struggling, like, yo, what are we gonna do? And I'm just here, I hear what's going on at the border, because I think I just heard that either some little girl passed at one of these holdings or something like Texas, that, right? Yeah. So it's like, I hear it, but I'm not as sensitive to it, because ain't no black dude get shot today, So I'm happy about that, but that doesn't mean I can ignore what's going on over here. And that was the point of the conversation, where we talk about racism a lot, especially in this political climate, and it just becomes a black and white issue, and it's not a black and white issue, man. There's something, you cannot point to a time in history where racism hasn't existed.
Correct.
We think that racism started at the transatlantic slave. That's not when it started. It's ingrained in our history. And for us to neglect that is to miss the whole point. And we're going to continue this cycle of just hating one another, thinking that just the white person is just X, Y, and Z, and not realizing, no, this is a human condition, that we are born evil. We're born evil, and that's just how it manifests itself. Whatever ism that you want to think of, classism, sexism, whatever ism, it stems from what? Hatred. Yeah. It stems from that, and then it outbursts into prejudice, whatever you want to call it, to oppression. It outbursts into that. And there's nothing that can cure that but Christ. And like I said, I hate to be so reductionist, because it's not just simply preaching the gospel. It's preaching the gospel and living it out as well. Yeah. And this is what living it out is: having these difficult conversations, being in these spaces with our white brothers who are completely clueless sometimes, and being able to love them, even as difficult as it may be. But that's what we're called to do. And I think God has put us in that unique position to be a blessing, to show grace, to show mercy. He's positioned us in that unique place to be able to offer that. But I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm glad we can just sit back and just have fun. And the conversation shouldn't end here, you know. So for those listening, just be mindful. Especially, you know, Black people, be mindful. Be mindful, you know. It's not just us. We're not the only, like you were talking about the oppression Olympics. We're not the only ones who suffered, man. We're not the only ones. He stole that from somewhere. We're not the only. Yeah, it's not his.
I'm sorry. I thought it was good.
Whatever.
It's good, but not mine.
Yeah, he gets no credit. But we're not the only ones who have suffered. So I couldn't have asked for a better episode. You guys did a phenomenal job. Again, for those who are watching, y'all would see me get up and down. I've got the new cameras, but they're old cameras, so hopefully, you know, as time progresses, we can, you know, step up the quality. Just thank you for our brother Jeremy, who has been helping us out, holding me down. Thank you so much. Again, you guys, stop raising your hand.
I got a question.
No one can see you.
I'm sorry. I got a question.
But you guys can always support. I put a link in the description for ways that you guys can support. But any last words from you brown people?
Well, it was a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thanks for having us to have this great discussion. I think it's just interesting because we come from many different backgrounds and yet can have great conversation. I'm going to plug myself. I'm Roshan John on Instagram. The Roshan John, I think, on Twitter. Haven't been on it for a bit. Yes. But yeah.
How do you spell that, by the way? Your name?
My name is spelled first name Roshan, Roshan, like ocean with an R, and last name John. J-O-H-N.
Isn't that like a contradiction? How you have an American last name?
Basically, we come from Eastern Orthodox Christian background, so we get a bunch of
slave
Christian
name?
names.
No. Oh,
what?
Whoa.
Well, because Black people have a slave name, so they have an American. So it's kind of like your slave
except
name.
it's
no
not
slavery.
from slavery.
Can they say Wakanda
It's from
forever?
just
Slave name.
yeah, but that's why. So
You're white people. The white
if
people.
you see Indians with English names, it probably means they come from like an Eastern Orthodox tradition. So
it's against their
that's
will.
why.
What you had to say, Bapo?
All right. I actually have a just general question for you.
All right.
If people do have questions, like particularly just because some people, whenever I do this stuff, they're like, hey, Bapo, can I get asked some questions? Can they come to you and ask so we can answer later for them, or what?
Absolutely not. I'm kidding.
What do you mean, like? Well, I have social media, so you have social media. So if you want to like DM me, please DM me or at me or whatever.
Yeah. So I guess that's the best platform. I guess.
Yeah. Please. I'd love to have conversations with whoever willing to have it.
So I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter. Mine is simply I am Bapo. The letter I, A-M, B-A-P-O. Hit me up, have questions. If you're gonna be honest with me, I'll be honest with you. So I do want to give that caveat. And Lord willing, we'll figure things out. So
No, go ahead.
though my last saying is simply that this is a process.
Yeah.
It's gonna take time. There's still pride and issues I gotta deal with.
Facts.
And would love you.
So next month, I want to say it'll be with me and my in-laws, so I'm looking forward to having that conversation. So keep an eye out next month for another episode of You Doing It Wrong. But yeah, it's been great having you guys.
Yeah,
Do you have a theme song at all?
I've got this song though.
Shout out to Jay-Z and Punjabi MC.
Live from United States, Brooklyn, New York, it's your boy. Young. The nephews is in the house. As soon as the beat drop, we got the streets locked overseas. A Punjabi MC in the rock. I came to see the mommies in the spot. On the count of three, drop your body like it's hot. 1, young, 2.